Good morning, guys. Welcome to a Thursday where we have the lake to ourselves pretty much. There's only a couple other anglers here. We're heading to a confidence area. And I want to talk about that today because the confidence area that I have, a lot of my friends, a lot of my content creator buddies, just in general, is their avoiding area. Like they don't fish it. And I want to try to give you guys some tips and tricks on how to fish shallow grass flats. Now, shallow is relative depending on the body of water you're on, but essentially what I'm trying to target is an area where there is grass and then about 1 to 2 feet above the grass for water. So the grass ends and you have 1 foot between the tips of that grass and the surface of the water. I love fishing those conditions. Bass live in that grass. They lay down in that stuff, they look up and they wait for a meal to swim by and they come up and smash it. You will catch some monsters doing this. But I think a lot of guys don't do it because they think, oh, well, the only thing you can fish in that is like a swim jig. And you have to be weedless with everything. It's kind of true, but it's really not. So today we're going to talk about different techniques. I'm going to show you guys different ways that I fish grass flats to show you that there is many different styles of fishing and you'll probably find one of your favorites. And you just have to modify it slightly to be able to apply it to this type of fishing, and you'll be shocked on how many monsters are just laying in that grass waiting to eat your bait.
Oh, that feels good. Oh, that's a big one. That's a big bass. That's actually a really good bass. Ooh, come here, bud. Man, that's a freaking beast.
All right, we're gonna start with the obvious bait first. Wacky rig. Now you can fish a wacky rig weedless. And that's what I just did. I'm gonna show you guys exactly how productive that can be in just a second. I actually want to get a weight on this fish, but check out this fish, guys. Beast of a bass, probably 3-pounder or so. I mean, definitely not a PB, but check that fish out, guys. See that right there? I'm not gonna actually weigh her. She's not that big, but that right there was caught on a simple wacky rig. But what people don't realize, and I'm sorry guys about the lawnmower in the background if you guys can hear that, but a lot of guys don't fish a wacky rig in the grass because a lot of people think you have to use an open hook. And you do in some situations, it's better hookup ratio, but this right here is how you avoid that. This right here is a reaction tackle weedless wacky hook. There's a lot of brands that make a weedless wacky version. They have fiber guards, they have metal little fingers. There's options out there that are weedless and you don't have to cast to a target. A lot of guys only fish the wacky rig on docks or they only fish it casting up to wood. I am literally just blind casting to the shoreline. Now, I will say I have an advantage of forward-facing sonar and I can actually look and see what kind of highs and lows are in front of me. I can kind of scan the bank to see where to cast, but you don't have to have that technology to do this. If you're fishing along a shoreline, honestly, what I do is I just blind cast a few times into the shoreline. And I'm gonna show you guys, if you're looking at my back camera, we're gonna switch you guys over there. I literally just cast it. Leave the bail open and just let the bait float around for a little bit. I highly recommend high vis braid if you're going to be doing this dead sticking style wacky rigging, because the wacky rig doesn't sink super fast. This is completely weightless, and depending on the style of worm you fish, a lot of the times it'll just sit there and flow along the tops. It won't always even get down to the bottom because ultimately it's just hovering above and it will sit on top of the grass when it comes to rest. So if you have a weedless hook like this, you can get it right up in those chunks of grass. I do recommend, if you can see, if you can stand up or you have visibility, of the grass you're casting to, try to find those holes. There's always like a rock, a tree, there's something usually in the grass mats that will create these little circles, these little holes. You want to drop the wacky rig down in there because a lot of times those fish will live down in those holes as well. But really, the wacky rig can be just as weedless as, you know, a Texas rig or any other style of grass bait. But what I like about the weightless wacky. All right, guys, now on to, we're going to kind of alternate between ones that kind of make sense and ones that don't make sense. But swim jig. So say you're trying to work that square bill. You want to work a reaction style bait. You want to power fish. You don't want to sit and dink and dunk with a wacky rig. Swim jig is going to be your friend. Swim jig is probably my favorite bait of all time. And that's why. Right there. Like I scripted that one. Swim jig is probably my favorite bait because fish just like it. They just love it. And once you get them hooked, you set that hook on those fish, they're probably not coming off easily. Like this one right here. He wasn't getting off at all. Matter of fact, I'm having a hard time getting them unhooked. But swim jig with some sort of paddle tail, a lot of guys will use like a craw. I personally like the streamline of using a Kitech or a small size swim bait. It's just something that I've just done and it always works for me. The key with a swim jig is use like a 1/4 ounce to start, work into a 1/2 ounce. You can go all the way up to 3/4 depending on your equipment. But really, in my opinion, you can't fish it slow enough. So I cast it way out as far as I can, bomb cast it. And you notice I didn't click my reel, I didn't do anything with it. And then I slowly reel it. I like to get that thing as deep as possible. I like to roll it through the grass. And whenever I get hung on the grass, whenever I feel like really catch, I just give the reel a quick pop. That's it. No real, I mean, if I'm real hung, I pop my rod. But for really, all I mostly do is just slowly roll it. And then if it gets hung, I pop my reel. This is something that it seems almost too slow. Like when you're retrieving this, if it feels like you're going too slow, that's probably the right speed in my opinion. It's just something about the way that that is a natural presentation, those skirts flaring, it's ripping through the grass, so it's kind of erratic at times, and you just kind of keep slowly working it through the grass, and you'll feel that fish bite. They pile drive a swim jig. So that's another technique, guys, that this one might be a little bit more obvious to most people. They think this is the one, but you don't have to have heavy gear. Everybody thinks that you have to fish it, you know, a specific way. You can use it medium, heavy, fast. FX is what I'm fishing this on. I do fish it on straight braid. It's just because I like to be able to home run hook set, but I have fished them on fluoro as well. Mono, whatever you got. Use 1/4 ounce, 1/2 ounce. I use a lot of different brands of jigs. The one I'm currently using is a reaction tackle, but there's Booyah, there's Pig Jigs. That's a company that it's a small bait maker that the swim jig is really my go-to. It's what I call my 4x4 crankbait. And this is a black blue, but you can do this with whatever color you prefer, black and blue. All right, guys, next bait. We're gonna actually put one on right now while we're talking. So there is certain baits that are a little bit more buoyant and come through grass a little bit better. So what I recommend is using square bills that don't dive as deep. For example, this right here is a 13 fishing scamp, but it's a 1 to 3 foot diving bait. So what does that mean? That means that I can get this thing over top of grass without it digging too hard into the grass. It's got all the functionality of a square bill, but the shallow divingness that I need to keep it above the grass. A lot of companies make baits that don't dive deeper than 3 feet. And if it's a 1 to 3 foot diving bait, depending on what line and type of rod you use, you really can keep that thing just below the surface. How I fish this in grass is pretty simple. You cast it out, keep your rod tip up at about a 45 to the water. That'll force that bait to come up instead of diving deep. And you reel it slowly. You do not need to burn this thing back. The harder you reel it, the deeper it's going to dive. Now you will catch some grass in those blades. Typically towards the end of the cast, you'll get a little bit of catching. As it gets closer to you, it tends to dive a little deeper. But using a cranking rod or a moderate rod is highly recommended for this, because you're going to be able to swing on that fish. You know, if you need to get into it, you're going to have a little bit more tip available to you by having your rod up high. But this is something that I highly recommend trying, because a lot of guys won't fish a square bill over grass. So those fish haven't seen a square bill, so they're less likely to be shy about it. Now, this is something that is situational. You're not going to be able to do this if the grass is sticking out of the water. If you're in a situation where the grass is actually above the surface of the water, this technique's not going to work for you. But if, as long as you have a foot of water between the tips of the grass, hold your rod at a 45-degree angle, slow roll it, and just take your time fishing it through. If you do get hung up in some grass, like right there, I just got hung up on some grass, stop reeling for a second and lift up. You don't have to yank it, you don't have to pop it. A lot of the times what that'll do is it'll come out. So this bait is probably one that a lot of people don't fish over grass, but I do it a lot. Jerk bait. Now, I'm going to show you guys in a minute how to do it sitting down, because for those in the kayak, I used to ask that question too. How do you fish it sitting down? But over top of grass, you can fish a floating, a slow sink, a suspending jerk bait. As long as you don't get it too deep, work it too aggressively, you won't get it embedded in that grass. Like, I don't tend to work it super heavy. And when it gets to the point where it gets too hung up, you just bring it back and work it again. But I don't recommend doing this, again, kind of like the square bill. I don't recommend doing it in situations where you have a ton of submergent grass. I don't recommend doing it in places that you have grass that's, you know, over the surface. But if you have 1 to 2 feet of available surface between the grass top and the water to get that bait through, you can hold your rod a little horizontal so you're not pulling it down into the grass, and you just give it a couple pumps, keep working it through the column, and you'll be surprised. I think that's a fish. No, this is grass. How well that works, because you got to remember, those fish are looking. You got to remember, those fish are looking for something to ambush. So they're laying in the grass and they're looking up and they see click, 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 click. It's a very good bait to fish over the top of grass, because of the nature of how you can keep it in place, keep it in the strike zone longer. So I highly recommend using a jerk bait. You just want to make sure you specifically get one that's designed to float or be very subsurface. You don't want to use, you know, a super deep diving version of a jerk bait. That's where you get hung up and end up getting aggravated. But if you have, like, Rapala makes the floating, perfect for this. Any type of bait that has, you know, kind of a shorter, wider bill that keeps it up in the surface. And when, like I was saying earlier, you can fish this from a kayak sitting down. You just keep your rod horizontal and just tap it like that. It's all in the wrist. You can work it just like this without having to stand up. So I used to ask that question a lot, coming from, you know, never really having fished much in a boat, honestly, mostly kayak fishing. How can I work a jerk bait properly? Well, do it horizontally, because you're level with the water. All right, guys, I got 2 more baits for you, and then we're gonna get back to fishing. So this right here is a 6 cents trace. It's a slow sink jointed swim bait. This is a bait I use when I'm trying to home run, when I'm trying to get that bigger than average fish. It's the one I have for drawing power, etc. The key is the slow sink or floating. Do not get the sinking. You'll regret it. It buries itself in the grass, and these are not cheap, and you may lose it. Same kind of deal as the crankbait. I fish it on a cranking rod. I keep my rod tip up, and I slow roll it through the column. This is the same concept as all these other baits. You're kind of trying to get them to look at it, see it in the strike zone as long as possible, and come up and smash it. One fair warning, with these slow sink or floating, they will jump a lot of times when they get these because they're coming from the bottom and they're trying to spear this thing. So you will get a fish that's going to rocket out of the water. So be prepared for them to knock slack in your line. Really be on your game and ready to set that hook because they tend to shamu, as I like to say. They come right out of the water a lot of times when they hit it. Or they hit it on the run, and almost always they seem to hit it at the angle that you don't want them to. So always have yourself, in general, you always want to be in a good position, but more so when doing this, you want to be in position to swing on them. You want to be ready to set that hook as soon as you feel that bite because they will bite it, run through it, and if you're not ready, you'll miss that fish. And a lot of times that's the big one that you wanted in the first place. But same concept as the square bill, slow roll it. I try to keep it in the strike zone as long as I can. I try to roll it as slow as I possibly can because I want that fish that's laying in the grass to look up, see that thing just S-ing all the way through, just kind of slowly working its way across the surface, and they'll come unglued and smash it. So just another kind of mention here. This is a little bit more expensive bait. It's probably the most expensive of all the ones I just listed, but it's definitely an effective style. You know, a floating, small size swim bait. I mean, you can get into glide baits and bigger ones too, same concept. Just try something like this if you want to upsize. You're going to get less bites, but you typically will get bigger ones. Last one. Right here. If you guys have watched my channel at all, you know all about the belly weighted swim bait hook with some sort of paddle tail. This is a bread and butter bait for me. It is a break glass in case of emergency. Insert whatever cliche you want here. Go-to confidence bait. I do fish it on spinning gear. I highly recommend fishing it on spinning gear because with most of these you'll want to fish like an 1/8 ounce, 3/16. It's a lighter style bait and it's hard to get out there. You want to cover as much water with this as you can. You want to bomb cast this thing as far as you possibly can and slow roll it through that whole area. It doesn't have nearly as much drawing power as that square bill, that chatterbait, that swim jig. It's not creating as much of a vibration on the water. But the beauty of this bait is the subtleness of it. In clear water fisheries, on days where there's not wake boats and jet skis blowing me all over the place like I am right now, it's a definite killer bait to use. It works really good in rivers. It's just overall, probably I've caught more fish on a belly weighted swim bait than any other technique. And by using that swim bait hook, you can skin hook it into the back or just push it down so it's flush, and it allows you to rip it through grass. It will come right through the thickest of cover. And I highly recommend trying this. Just like all the other techniques, slow retrieve. You do not want that thing rolling over. You want it to just kind of work through the column. Now, if you do get hung up in grass, give it a quick pop on the reel and it will jump through. But this is definitely the type of bait that you want to work as slow as you possibly can stand it on, and just keep casting long distances and rolling it through, and it will just sit there above the grass, slowly meandering, and it becomes the perfect tiny bait fish presentation for those bass. When they're a little bit picky, they're a little bit finicky, you just cannot get them to bite any of the other styles. Pull out a Kitech, Rage Swimmer, whatever your brand, 6 Sense Whale, whatever your brand is, throw it on a belly weighted hook, cast it out, and I can almost guarantee you'll catch something. It might be a bluegill, it might be a small species of bass, but you'll still start getting numbers. It'll help you locate fish, and then maybe you can upsize to a different technique. So that's what I have for you guys.